What are the impacts of age on the brain and one's sanity? So, like, as you get older, does that, like, knowing that you're old make you start to lose your mind, or does age in general just...
I think it's age in general. I think the research, I think we're starting to figure out physical relationships that would cause, like, dementia, Alzheimer's thing. Is that what you're talking about in general? Yeah. I think some of the stresses of age can add to it as well. Like your inability to do things add to your stress levels, which would then... And for women, it might be more hormonally backed as well. But that's not what you're talking about, so it's okay. Just ask.
So in the play, he is he leaves his two of his daughters in charge, and they basically kick him out of the kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
So how much does emotional trauma, especially involving family, have on one's...
How old is he?
He's pretty old.
When they do it?
Yeah. He knows...
So does he go crazy after, like, so the gist of the story is he's king.
Yes.
And his kids kick him out of his empire and then he goes crazy?
So, like, do you think that could have had more of an impact than his age? Because his okay.
Right. But, you know, I talk about the because is he isolated? Is he by himself now out in the...
No, he has a group of followers that stay with him. And
I think he was probably crazy to start with.
Okay.
But that's just my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Do they give you much of his... Does the story begin with him?
The story begins with him dividing his kingdom between two of his daughters.
Right. So you don't know much of his life before this.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would the trauma trigger?
It certainly could. So any of that could, you know, I mean, drastic events. You know, there's post-traumatic stress disorder.
Mm-hmm.
There are lots of things, and I don't know how devastated he is by getting kicked out of his kingdom. I'm sitting here going, now I want to read it, because I'm wondering if Shakespeare was just trying to explore insanity in general and used that story as a way to talk about insanity and not so much what was happening, but just looking at insanity. But that's just my thoughts. But certainly, huge traumatic. That's why I asked when, because the younger you are, you're still, and you're always developing synaptic connections and stuff in your brain. So that's happening constantly throughout life, and you're getting rid of stuff that you don't use. So stress and trauma and things like that. When you're younger, in particular, those environments could cause you to make different types of connections, I believe, which could then later lead to problems. We see that happen a lot with little kids in trauma. So one would think it could be the same for adults, but we don't see that as often. If that makes any sense to you.
Yeah, one questions we have is what can trigger psychological, like the appearance of psychological disorders?
Well, my guess would be is you start with a predisposition, like potentially like a genetic or a family predisposition. And we're talking royalty, so often we talk, inbreeding and various things so there might be that predisposition there, but certainly any major trauma, stress. Chemical imbalances, so changes in nutrition, even and things like that, could cause, chemical hormones can change, any of that kind of stuff. And stress and major issues can cause all that kind of stuff. And how old is he? Do you think?
They don't say. He's probably...
So it could just be dementia coming on, too.
Do you think he's well over 70?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, so it could just be natural onset of dementia or Alzheimer's or whatever.
All right, we were wondering, like, he's king, so he has a lot of power and probably stress. Can that kind of deteriorate the mind at all?
Sure. Stress is extremely harmful on your body. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, well, and I wonder, now you got me thinking, but he'd already given up his power
Yeah, who's in the process of
in the process.
providing.
So that wouldn't be the traumatic event. I'm like, because sometimes, you know, that loss of
Uh-huh.
power could,
Well, there are also other characters in the play who are seeking power. There's like a side plot of a guy who has his father killed and frames his brother and tries to get him.
all that good medieval
Yeah.
monarchical stuff that's wonderful. So I'm sorry, what was your last question though? You just asked me
Like,
something.
Power, like
Oh,
either
the
seeking
stress
power
of
or-
being king and all that kind of
yeah.
stuff. I would think that would, because we know stress is very harmful. It is tough on your body in general. You produce different hormones, you do all that kind of stuff. So certainly long-term stress that you could experience as king could have effects on your brain.
Okay.
And then one of our theories that we're using to explain King Lear kind of has to do with Freud and his school of thoughts. So could you briefly explain a little bit about Freud?
Freud's very subconscious,
Mm-hmm.
very little conscious awareness. What can I ask what your theory is? But Freud in general, you have these elements of your personality that are pretty much you're completely unaware of. They use an iceberg as an analogy for Freud. So you have this conscious awareness as this little tip of the iceberg, and then underneath is this giant iceberg where your id, your ego, and your superego are constantly fighting. Your id is your very primal, childlike person. Superego is like your conscience. But all that's outside of your awareness. Like you think he goes crazy, why? What is Freudian about why King Lear goes?
Well, we're actually thinking using Freud and how Shakespeare wrote this play, and then like why the subconscious of him in the play.
Oh,
Of Shakespeare.
Of
Yeah.
Shakespeare.
Yeah, that's one of the aspects.
So you're saying that Shakespeare is doing transfer, kind of.
Yeah.
Maybe subconsciously.
Yeah, right. Oh, and there's there's a test. Crap. The TAT. One of the ways that we test for abnormality is this might be something you want to look up. I'm trying to think what the name of it is. Where is it on here? Treatment, classification. The thematic apperception, APPERCEPTION, apperception test. And that's what they do is they show you like a picture and ask you to write a story. And this is very Freudian in nature. And then they think that what you put, all the different elements that you bring into the story say a lot about your personality. And so that's one of the ways that they actually test people, one of the battery of tests that they give to people when they're seeking help in trying to diagnose what type of mental illness they might have.
Okay.
And there's information online. So could that be something that Shakespeare himself was experiencing and bringing through? Totally. That's actually.
And we actually just found out yesterday this was a pretty dark period of his life. And he wrote a few major tragedies, like some of Hamlet was written and Macbeth was.
Out, damn spot. Macbeth's the one I've read. I'm like, and she's kind of, Lady Macbeth kind of loses it. But, after you kill people.
So they all kind of deal with madness, so.
Yeah, so maybe
It'd
he's.
definitely be a.
Freud would have. I wonder if Freud read Shakespeare. I wonder if Freud had any theories about what Shakespeare was going through. Because I see what you're saying now. That would very much. Freud would have a field day with some of that stuff, most certainly. And you should look up. You want me to write down this test, or do you want to write it down? It might be something to help you back up your theory. And it's right. The name of it's right here. And there's a reasonable amount of stuff. Okay, cool. Yeah, certainly Freudian psychologists would look at that and see that, or could interpret that. I haven't read the story, but certainly, how powerful was Shakespeare, like in his realm? Is he a real poor guy, wealthy guy? I don't know much about Shakespeare as an individual.
Not sure.
Because I'm wondering if he was experiencing some power changes. There's stuff in his life too. This is a dark period. You know what I mean? Like a lot of those guys. Depends on where you are in social class at that time.